Okay, welcome to Intro to Psychedelics. This is course EXCO 301.24 in the Experimental College here at San Francisco State. If you're not aware, the Experimental College is all taught by undergraduate students as volunteer instructors like me, and they're all one-unit courses. So the workload is substantially less than a one-unit class, or excuse me, a three-unit class. Per the university guidelines, for a one-unit course, and in this case, there's one class each week. It's 100 minutes, right? So 60 and 40, hour and 40 minutes, 100 hours a week. And then the required outside work is 80 minutes a week for a total of 180 minutes. So that's what, 3 hours? Yeah? And there is an asynchronous component. So my expectation is that the students who are taking this asynchronous, that they will watch the recordings that I'm making, and that you do the reading. It's on the honor system for all students, right? And I'll get more into the readings and how you can manage your time best. We're going to use AI and different prompts to synthesize the reading and to make presentations and summaries and analysis. All right, we are over 10 minutes past the start time, so I'm going to go ahead. Just a few critical details. This is an official San Francisco State University course. If you want to check out exco.sfsu.edu, you can see the full list of courses and more of a history behind the experimental college, which started in the, I think, 60s, 70s. It was a response to the need for students to create their own curriculum and have more academic freedom. And it has waxed and waned over the years in terms of how many courses have been offered and stuff. But as Dan Curtis Cummings, the director of EXCO, has said, they managed to survive the pandemic, and it's still going strong as a program. My name, again, is Nathanael Horton, and my email is nhorton@sfsu.edu. Please email for me for anything. That's the best way to reach me. I'm most responsive that way, okay? I already covered it's asynchronous as well as in person. And then I haven't determined on my office hours yet. I've been still figuring out my schedule and stuff. For now, if you want to email me, I'm more than happy to have individual appointments with you in person or on Zoom. I will get around by the end of the second week, next week, to announcing official office hours, which actually may be before this class, but I think I'm going to do a survey and check with you all, like whatever fits best for you. Right, one credit, I said that already. It's in Health and Human Services. I think that's the name for the acronym. HSS 317, and the course registration number CRN is 7831. Okay, our agenda today, Wednesday, August 27th, 2025. Welcome to Intro to Psychedelics. I'm going to talk about the course overview. I'm very happy to hear that you have all already looked at the syllabus, so I'll just speed through that. It's available on Canvas and Google Docs and such. I'll go over the course objectives. There are 5 bullet points. I'll go over the textbook, the reading materials, how to engage with that best, and my recommendations. The course schedule, which is basically like drug of the week with associated psychological, philosophical, and religious topics. That happens to be my major and my minor here at SFSU. We'll go over grading and evaluation, which I have some flexibility on. This is supposed to be in part a co-creation between you and me, right, as the students and the instructor. So yeah, we'll talk about that. And lastly, we'll talk about classroom community and policies, and then I'll actually get into a lecture, okay? So I'll get through the details here, and then we'll get into the good stuff. All right, course overview. So together we will explore diverse dimensions of the psychedelic experience and substances through a global and historical lens. This course is a rich mix of readings, online discussion posts, lectures, guest speakers, and the use of artificial intelligence. We will foster a classroom community built on curiosity, mutual respect, and safety. Grading will be based on the completion of online discussion posts, a final project proposal, which is due like in the middle of the semester, and the presentation of a final project. And I already covered the fact that this is about 180 minutes of coursework per week, given this is a one-unit class. And then I wanted to talk a bit about my background. My name is Nathanael. I'm a senior undergraduate here. I'm also a certified and experienced psychedelic wellness practitioner, and I have considerable experience with psychoactive substances. My work is rooted in education and building community. I've trained with the Mahadevi Ashram and Kaivalya Yoga School in Guatemala at the time, the Psychedelic Sitter School, and I served as vice president of the Psychedelic Club of San Mateo, which is a 501c3 nonprofit. The course objectives are to critically think about and assess the compelling and complex history behind psychedelics, their significance to society, and the stigma surrounding them. The second course objective, to develop skills and strategies for analyzing key psychedelic topics using ChatGPT, including analysis, summarization, research, and presentations. Third bullet point, understand the benefits of safe and informed practices around psychedelic substances in clinical and non-clinical environments, as well as an understanding of risks and adverse effects. Fourth, understand the psychopharmacological and neuroimmunological effects and mechanisms of psychedelic substances. And the last bullet point, understand the variety of cultural, shamanic, religious, philosophical, and psychological practices and worldviews involving psychedelic use. So, this course is fairly ambitious in its scope as an introduction, but I've made it as accessible as possible, right, to you as students. Last thing I want to mention here is the textbook, which is really cool. It is published 2023 by MIT Press, and it's called Expanding Mindscapes, A Global History of Psychedelics. It is a Creative Commons license, so it's free. So you can find it on Canvas. It's also linked in the syllabus. And what I really like about it is the global scope. We're going to talk about stories from all over the world and different cultures, and I think it's pretty substantial while still being accessible and interesting. Like you won't get bored. Like maybe you'll like some chapters more than others, but like it really draws you in. And part of the lectures, as you'll see with the introduction, what I did, I'm presenting the epilogue to the book today. The epilogue is at the end, but the end of the book actually helps define the term psychedelic, which I think we should do at the beginning. So it's a little reversed today, but you'll see why. And the lecture will go more into depth about the things I found most important about the epilogue, which will be the pattern of how I'm going to talk about the readings in lecture. I expect you've committed to, as students, as part of the contract, as being part of this class, to do the reading before class. You'll see on Canvas, I've already posted the epilogue sample. There is a ChatGPT summary of the chapter of the week. There's also background on the author who wrote the chapter, including links to their website if I can find it. There's also a plain text copy-paste, meaning I copy-pasted from the textbook into a Google Doc. Reason I did that is so that you can take that as a PDF and put it into ChatGPT and interrogate it as you wish. If you put the textbook into ChatGPT, it might work, but the AI can get overwhelmed with too many tokens. It's just too much text. So I simplified it to you, for you, and I used Google Gemini's large language model podcast creator thing I fed it the PDF of the chapter, and it's like an interview podcast host, two podcast hosts, they're AI. And they talk about the chapter, which is like 15-minute, depending on the chapter size. So I am spoon feeding you as best I can with the golden spoon, the information, which is to mean I'm making it as accessible as possible to you. I'm pre-digesting some of it. You're welcome to, I'd love it if you read the whole chapter, but I understand that your time is valuable. This is a one-unit course. You have other priorities. I mean, you're here because you have an interest in psychedelics, but I'm also realistic, and maybe one week you have less time than another. You do it at your own pace. I don't think there's a right or wrong way to do this, okay? Is that fair? Yeah? Okay, I think it's pretty fair. I do my best here. Okay, so moving on. I just wanted to highlight, Well, you've seen the syllabus. I won't go over the whole syllabus week by week, but as I said, it's drug of the week. And today is Introduction, Class Rules, and Ethics. Okay. So before I get into the psychedelic semantics part, I did want to discuss class rules. One of the most important one is the campus drug and alcohol policy is basically no, right? No drugs, no alcohol for campus events, for classroom, distribution, production, there's a whole list of stuff, and the consequences. It's on the syllabus, so I'm not going to go over it right now. I think it's just pretty clear. Don't. I will be very disappointed if you do that. I don't expect you to. You all seem like pretty cool and mature. I cannot protect you from the consequences. I will also say I'm not the police, right? So that's my stance. Those are the rules. And we all expect mutual respect. And that's vice versa, right? Me to you, you to me. And yeah, if you want to see any more rules, especially about AI policy, there is an AI policy with the school, which is basically you have to decide the AI policy about work per instructor. And I've already explained to you my AI policy basically in brief, and it's in the syllabus in depth. Okay, so I think that does it for rules. Let's jump into, let's play this again. Yeah, let's just jump in. So, psychedelic semantics. The complex and evolving nature of the term psychedelic has been shaped by shifting cultural, scientific, and political frameworks over time. As the current psychedelic renaissance unfolds, it is crucial to remain mindful of the need to balance medical and scientific approaches with an understanding of the deeper, more holistic, as well as spiritual, religious, and shamanic use of these substances. There are significant differences in frameworks and language, which we'll get into, on psychedelics and Western and non-Western traditions. It would be helpful if I turned on this camera. Okay, we got that going. So something I want to share, I'll share more of my biography as we go through this class. Western and non-Western. On my father's side of my family, it is German, English, Welsh. And on my mother's side is Kaqchikel Mayan, which is an indigenous subgroup of the Mayan people in Guatemala, in Central America. So I'm a mixed mestizo, mixed race, you could say, mixed cultures. I was born in Boston, but I actually grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area. My first memories are of San Francisco. I have a vague memory of the earthquake in the late 80s, a piece of pottery falling off a shelf and crashing. So, yeah, I consider myself basically from the Bay Area, and I currently live in San Mateo. So, I'm a bit Western and I'm a bit non-Western. Yeah. All right. The problem with drugs. The term drug has undergone a significant transformation, shifting from a neutral descriptor to a stigmatized category associated with addiction, criminality, and radicalized narratives. Around 1900, drug acquired a secondary meaning, becoming linked to pejorative connotations of dangerous drugs, drugs of pleasure, and drugs of abuse. I mean, oh my God, like you could actually enjoy drugs, right? How terrible. I will mention we will get into recreational use at the end of this course, so don't worry. All right, the evolving language of psychedelics. So here I'm presenting a timeline, okay? There's a number of slides in a timeline, and I'll pause at some and give some more imagery and stuff by exiting this presentation and going to my browser on my laptop. So here we go. From ancient sacraments to modern therapy. So pre-19th century, that's kind of putting it mildly, like thousands and maybe even tens of thousands of years ago, right? Sacred and indigenous terms. Things like sacred medicine, plant teachers or plant medicines, food of the gods, vine of souls, ayahuasca, Teo Nanakatal, the flesh of the gods, mushrooms in Mesoamerica, and also like the framing of how these substances were used, like divine, medicinal, cosmological. Note, you don't see psychological in here, right? That's later, okay? That's other cultures. Right. On that note, let's see, where did I go? Here we go. Ah, how's that showing up? Cool. So these are hongo de piedra de la cultura maya. These are mushroom stones from the Mayan culture. That's pretty cool, huh? You can see like the faces on them, and they're definitely mushrooms. I mean, what else could this be, right? And often used, I believe, in ceremonies, right? Individuos de cabeza, with individuals with heads. I'll show you a few more slides. Oh, there we go. Okay. These are a variety, there's many, many kinds of psychedelic mushrooms. I'm not going to go over this right now. I'll save it for the mushroom lecture. But just so you know, there's not just one psilocybe mushroom. All right. This is pretty cool. Now we're talking about South America. Piezas de oro. These are made of gold, it's like this one here. Mujer 27, this one. Mujer con hongos, a woman with mushrooms in Colombia. And it says here, las flechas señalan los hongos. These are the mushrooms. You can see the arrows pointing to the mushrooms. I like this one. So this is parte del códice. Oh my gosh, how do you pronounce that? This is a códice, which is a codex. So these are drawn images from like the conquistador times. This you can see the mushroom right there. This is a god that's with a practitioner here. Very clear depictions of mushrooms. This says vestigios prehistóricos del uso de hongos hallucinéticos. These are prehistoric images. You can see at the top left, we're talking about northern Africa and cave drawings. Number 10, this guy over here, Cueva de Tassili in Africa. And you can see this animal drawn on the cave. And right here in the corner, there's the mushrooms. And notice something really cool. Why would there might be an association with like a bull or a cow? You see the horns and mushrooms. Any guesses? Yeah. Maybe because the mushrooms grow out of the cow poop. Excellent. You got it. Yes. They grow out of the manure, the cow poop. Yeah. So you can see how somebody would want to depict that, right? There's an immediate connection. And as you can stretch the imagination even further, these, let's say, tribes, these prehistoric groups, would then follow the herds, would then be pooping, and then be mushrooms, and then you move on to the next one. You're moving around, right? So this is really cool. So this gets into the global aspect. And mushrooms are all over the world, different varieties, and different artistic depictions. This one is Psilocybe zapotecorum. That's the species, 16 at the top. And then you can see these figurines that look like they're in a circle. Oh, they're honoring Quetzalcoatl. Okay, that's what's going on. Which is a Mesoamerican god. Who's, let's see, is there anything else here? Oh, yeah. This is Amanita muscaria. You can see on the left, very distinctive. Let's see. And then there's some more oh, that's pretty cool. Number 6. I think these are mushrooms coming out of the eyes. Yeah. Muscaria en vez de los ojos. Instead of eyes, you can see the muscaria in the eye sockets. Very briefly, I'll say that Santa Claus is based off the Amanita muscaria. The coloring, the red and the white, in the Siberian Nordic traditions. And the idea was that in the winter, people would get snowed in, and the snow would pile so high. So really, like the best way to get it, I mean, the door would be hard to open or the windows, but the chimney would still be clear, right? So there was shamans would come with a bag of stuff, including dried Amanita muscari mushrooms. And they didn't have TV back then, right? So what are you going to do when you're snowed in your cabin with your family? Drop in some hallucinogenic mushrooms, and you can relax and have a good time with that. To take it even further, there is some toxicity associated with Amanita muscaria, so dosing is important. But one way they got around the toxicity was they would feed it. The reindeer would actually eat it by themselves, but you could feed it to reindeer, and then you could collect their urine, which filters out some of the toxicity, and actually drink that. Now, I wouldn't do that personally, but people, find inventive ways to make the drugs safer, right? And so, yeah, that's the origins of Santa Claus, believe it or not. You can look that up. All right. That's it for these slides. I'm going to go back to the presentation. Boop. Okay. And now play. So that was a quick overview of prehistoric times. Now we're in the 19th century, so 1800s, right? Romanticism and curiosity. Fantastica, that's what German physicians might call what we now call psychedelics. Narcotics, that's pretty commonly used still, but it's very broad and misleading in a lot of ways in relations to psychedelic effects. So the framing here is like exotic curiosities, especially from the colonies, because as the Europeans were exploring and bringing stuff back with samples that they were trying out, like what the heck is this? They didn't have the cultural context that these cultures that they would bring things from, right? They're trying to figure out what is this. And this is also, note this time in science, right? The beginnings of like chemistry, right? And analysis. And later psychology. Okay, so late 19th to early 20th century psychiatry. Now we're getting to psychiatry. Words like fantasticum in Europe, psychotoxin, schizotoxin. So note the like kind of the danger, the toxicity, like it could make you sick and poisoned, right? Which it can, totally. Hallucinophane in French psychiatry. So the framing here is pathological and studying insanity. Like this, you take this stuff and you go bonkers, right? Right. 1930s and 1940s, psychiatry and lab research. Words like psychomimetic. Mimetic is like to copy, right? So it's like copying a psychotic state. Interesting. Psychodysleptic. I need to define that, but they talked about that. So the framing here is diagnostic and a model of psychosis. In fact, when LSD was discovered, we'll talk about that later with Albert Hofmann in Switzerland, he took it and they were like wondering, I believe it was Sandoz Laboratories, they were wondering what to do with this new drug discovery. I mean, what do you do with this stuff? How can we sell it and make money off of it? One idea, because they were psychologists, psychiatrists in the lab, was what if we give this to doctors, psychiatrists, psychologists, so that they can experience temporarily what it is like to be psychotic? And that could give them insights into treatments for people who have that illness, right? Which, going right into it, Humphrey Osmond, we're talking about the evolving language of the psychedelic experience. He was born 1917, died in 2004. He was a British psychiatrist. And he is particularly important because he coined the term psychedelic in conjunction with and in consultation with Aldous Huxley, who famously, you probably all read in high school, Brave New World, right? So I found this last night. Can I zoom in? I can't zoom in, but I'll read some of it, and you can see it in the slides at home. This is a paper, the citation is here, from Humphrey Osmond, 1957, a review of the clinical effects of psychomimetic agents. And this is on the left is the front page of the manuscript, and the right side is the last page. So I won't read the whole thing, but briefly, the title is A Review of the Clinical Effects of Psychomimetic Agents. And so he's using this term psychomimetics generically for compounds that have been called schizogens, psychotica, psychotogens, fantastica, hallucinogens, and elixirs. Maybe I should read the whole thing. If one believes that the importance of these compounds lies in their capacity to mimic the mental illnesses called psychoses, psychomimetics would be the term of choice. This capacity alone would make these drugs the focus of psychopharmacological inquiry, but this capacity is not their only, nor even perhaps their most important quality. It is but recently that the relationship between psychomimetics and schizophrenia has become somewhat clearer. Later in this presentation, I suggest a more inclusive term. Okay. I'll go down a little bit. He says, since there are few substances that in large doses will not produce changes in body and mind resembling some mental illness, I shall try to limit our field of inquiry by a definition that will prevent workers in this field being overwhelmed with an inconveniently large portion of the pharmacopoeia. Okay? This definition will be improved. He wants a better word, right? And I make it in order to provoke such improvement. Psychomimetic agents are substances that produce changes in thought, perception, mood, and sometimes in posture. In posture. We're going to talk about that. The somatic effects on the body, right? Occurring alone in concert without causing either major disturbances of the autonomic nervous system or addictive craving. And although with overdosage, disorientation, memory disturbance, stupor, which is like falling asleep kind of, right? And even narcosis may occur. These reactions are not characteristic. So he's saying what does seem to be happening with these psychomimetic agents and what doesn't seem to be happening, right? Inclusive and exclusionary criteria. This rough and ready guide excludes morphine, this opiate, right? Cocaine, atropine, and their derivatives. It also excludes anesthetics, analgesics, and hypnotics. I expect, however, that there will still be some overlapping of these divisions. Using this guide, we have a sizable list stating with a still unidentified soma imported from Central Asia into India several thousand years ago and ending with, I don't know this compound, something, 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 the acronym is TMA, and bufotenin. Bufotenin we'll actually talk about, especially from toads. It can also be synthesized. Adrenochrome. You know, it's funny, before I read this, I didn't know adrenochrome was a real substance. You know, you hear about it in conspiracy stuff. It's real. And adrenolutin, whose qualifications for inclusion in this classification are still being examined. All right? So remember, this is 1957. So, briefly on the topic of soma, which he says is imported from Central Asia and is still unidentified, one of the chapters here is about soma, which was used by Buddhist, Hindu traditions, I believe. We'll get more into the details in the chapter from the textbook. Soma has at least 50 constituent ingredients and has a whole history of ritual use. It's a fascinating substance we'll talk about later, but I just want to note that it's there. Okay, and then jumping to the end of this piece, I want to thank Robin Carhart Harris, shout out to him, for providing the last page on his Instagram feed. Dr. Carhart Harris is a world-famous neurologist at UCSF who specializes in psychedelic investigations. And he's very active on social media, and he's very generous with his time in interacting with the public around psychedelic education. So I tried to access Humphrey Osmond's paper, but it was behind a paywall. So anyway, the last page, I won't read the whole thing, but it says, I believe that there is a place for the use of these substances in the training of psychiatrists, psychologists, nurses, and others working with the mentally ill. I have linked these agents with recent work on the reduced and specialized environment by Hebben Lilly, and I have discussed some psychological, social, and philosophical implications. inherent in this inquiry, relating them to the newer work on perception. In view of these considerations, I've suggested that psychomimetic is far too narrow a generic term. And I have suggested several that imply alterations in the normal mind. Among these proposed designations are psychohormic. Yeah, that's never catching on. Psychohormic, psycherhexic, I think, and psychizemic. My own preference being psycholytic or psychedelic, which literally means mind manifesting. Yeah? Okay, so there we go. And I'm assuming these are Dr. Carhart Harris's notes. He says nice. Right? Like, yeah, okay, that works. Like, all right. So, yeah. So Dr. Carhart Harris's comments, yes, Humphrey, his 1957 classic in which he coins psychedelic. Notice something. Why do you think there's a 3 here in term? Why is it spelled with a 3? Yes? So that Instagram doesn't shut it down? Isn't that funny? I mean, considering all the stuff that you see on Facebook and Instagram that's not censored, like, what year is this? 2025? I'm pretty sure. That, yeah, we have, like, still this stigma, legal media censorship. Is this... Anyway, I just wanted to make a note of that. I think that's, yeah. Okay. So as we just explored, coining the term psychedelic, in 1956-57, psychiatrist Humphrey Osmond coined the term. He particularly was interested in researching the use of mescaline and LSD. In psychiatry, he explored the potential for treating alcoholism. In fact, there's lots of papers on LSD, on alcoholism, and treating other mental illnesses before it was made illegal in about 1970. LSD, to my recollection, is actually one of the most, if not the most, researched psychedelic in the research literature. He collaborated with Aldous Huxley, which helped inspiring the doors of perception. Osmond helped bring serious scientific and cultural attention to psychedelics. Distinguishing from earlier terms, this new term was intended to differentiate the experience from earlier psychiatric labels like psychomimetic and hallucinogen and the other funny-sounding ones, which carried a stigmatizing connotation of mental illness. So lastly, we're expanding and elevating consciousness. Aldous Huxley wanted a word that implied an expansion and elevation of consciousness rather than an impairment or disorder that connected the experience to the life-changing epiphanies of saints and mystics. And we're going to get into the mystical experience and divination and other aspects of spiritual use of psychedelics. So yeah, just to be clear, the coinage of the term psychedelic in 1956 marked a critical shift in how these mind-altering substances were conceptualized, moving away from psychiatric labels that pathologized them and emphasized the potential for personal growth and spiritual insight. Okay, moving on, 1950s, the birth of psychedelic science. We talked about Osmond in 1957. Hallucinogen became a very popular word. It still is used often, especially in legal contexts. You'll see hallucinogen used. To be clear, the effects of psychedelics are very dose dependent. Like microdosing is usually done to avoid the hallucinogenic experience, right? Especially in like Silicon Valley. Like I think there's this guy named Rusk or Fusk. I forget his name. This is this famous rocket engineer guy. Elon something. Who is it? Elon Musk. Thank you. Yes. He's very famous, but I don't think about him that often. But I hear that he loves to partake, and I think above microdose level. But a lot of engineers, we're going to talk about that in one of the readings. A lot of engineers would like microdose LSD, ketamine, other stuff, right? For insights, but avoiding the higher dose symptoms, right? So hallucinogen is one term. So the framing here is therapeutic, clinical. Okay, now we're getting into the 1960s. Very famous time for psychedelics, especially in the United States. The counterculture, the Cold War, right? Communism, capitalism, right? So now there's some other terms we can explore, like mind-expanding drugs, consciousness expansion, some of the slang, sort of, like other terms. Acid is mostly referred to LSD. Lysergic something acid is we'll talk about that. Shrooms, I like the term shrooms, and I like shrooms. We'll talk about shrooms. Trips, uh, I always find that very appropriate. Like you're going on a trip, you're going on a journey, right? I'm tripping, not over your shoelaces, but you're like tripping. But we have slang like "don't trip, dude." You know, like it's a flexible term, the trip, and it certainly takes some time to go on a trip, right? To take it, and you're in for the ride until it's over. Although there are ways to manage the metabolism of it, to even stop it with certain other drugs as emergencies. We might talk about that. Benzodiazepines, antipsychotics can be used to like make the trip easier or even kind of stop it. But when you take it, right? And then you're on a trip. Psychomimetic fades, right? We already have psychedelic now by this point in time. Hallucinogen dominates legally. I mentioned this, right? In the legal writings, you'll see hallucinogen. Framing, liberation, even revolution in the 1960s versus danger. And then after the counterculture, well, still going on into the 1970s, then we have a term called entheogen. Anyone heard this term before, entheogen? So this is a book called Sacred Mushrooms and the Law. Forward by Terence McKenna, who was a famous psychonaut. There is a short quote here by Maria Sabina. We'll talk more about her on Mushroom Day. She was a shamaness, especially with mushrooms in Mexico. There is a world beyond ours, a world that is far away, nearby, and invisible. And there is where God lives, where the dead live, the spirits, and the saints. A world where everything has already happened and everything is known. We'll talk about her in one of the chapters in relation to divination, which is really fascinating. Anyhow, entheogen. Entheogen defined. In Greek, the word entheos means literally God, theos, so God within, and was used to describe the condition that follows when one is inspired and possessed by the God that has entered one's body. It was applied to prophetic seizures, erotic passion, and artistic creation, as well as to those rites in which mystical states were experienced through the ingestion of substances that were transubstantial with the deity. With the Greek root gen, it denotes the action of becoming. And this is a definition from Carl Ruck. All right. Yep. Other terms, plant sacrament. Sacrament is used in religious contexts a lot, right? You might have like the blood of Christ, the wine, the wafer, that kind of stuff. Lots of sacraments. A lot of the churches in the Bay Area, the psychedelic churches, the mushroom churches, they use the word sacrament instead of drug or psychedelic, especially for legal, constitutional, and genuine religious reasons, right? It's the sacrament. Visionary medicine, teacher plants, they can teach you things. They can give you messages. They can speak to you. You can speak back to them and go back and forth. Well, talk about that. Is that real? Is that genuine? Is that mystical? Is that a delusion? Is that your own mind under the influence? Is it all of that at the same time? We'll get into that later in the course. That's fascinating. And how do you navigate that? If you get a message, what do you do with that? How do you integrate that? Do you act on it? Do you ignore it? So here the framing is now getting into the underground and a spiritual revival. Because at the end of the 1970s, more or less, LSD was outlawed, and then the door shut on psychedelics. All right. 1980s to 1990s. MDMA and rave culture. We'll get into MDMA was actually discovered much earlier in the 1900s, but then it like sat on a shelf for a long time. Later on, it was like you could say rediscovered or repopularized, and it escaped the lab and got into the streets, got into the raves. And to be clear, MDMA also has an amphetamine quality, which would get you really, really going, right? Really energized. One of my favorite terminologies with MDMA in like psychiatric terms is psychomotor agitation. Basically, you want to dance a lot, right? All night long, which I experienced. Actually, I bought this poncho and did MDMA in Guatemala at my first Psytrance music festival about 10 years ago. I took an indeterminate but pretty high dose, and I was dancing all night. I was very psychomotorily agitated, and I was very, I couldn't dance in public until that night, and now I can dance in public, for the most part. So anyway, some other like slang terms, ecstasy, Molly. There is a feeling of ecstasy with it. Molly for short. Dissociatives and deliriants as separate categories. We are going to talk about dissociative elements of psychedelics, like ketamine. Mushrooms can cause dissociation, other psychedelics. But I'm not going to get too much into deliriants, just for time and clarity. But deliriants are definitely can mess with your head and are very strong. Even something like Benadryl. Once I took too much Benadryl because there was a fuzzy sweater that was causing allergies, and I was meeting my girlfriend at the time's parents for the first time at their home, and I didn't want to be itching, so I took Benadryl, but I didn't know it can be like a deliriant. So I took too much, and then I'm meeting her parents, and I'm like whacked out. Didn't go too badly because I told them what happened, but yeah, deliriants are not psychedelics per se. But as Osmond pointed out, there are overlapping categories, okay? Framing, rave subculture, recreational use, and also we're going to get into very specifically, I have an awesome guest speaker, Dr. Carlos Scott Lopez, who specializes in MDMA, amongst other things. And he's going to come talk to us. He did his dissertation on MDMA. He's going to come talk to us about its therapeutic use and other uses. And we'll also talk about the Bay Area specific histories behind MDMA. Okay, now we're turning the century into a new century. We're in the 2000s, 2010s, the aughts. Psychedelic renaissance. We're getting into that now. So entheogen grows in academia. I just defined that for you. You see that there's more recognition about the spiritual God manifesting within aspects, not just the psychological term, right? Because psychedelic was coined by psychiatrists. And psychedelic regains legitimacy in research. This is highly important because without the research element, the ability for universities to study this, you couldn't get it back into the mainstream. It was stuck in the illegality, right? So it is now gaining legitimacy by being in research institutions, but it starts very slowly. And you had to get, like, you still do to a large extent, DEA licenses that can often be rejected, and you need funding. And also a lot of institutions didn't want to touch the topic of psychedelics. It was just too dangerous for them. They didn't think it was legitimate. It wasn't worth the risk. But now there are many research institutions, universities around the world that study psychedelics in depth in various ways. UCSF has one, UC Berkeley, Stanford, to name a few. Okay, other term, spirit molecule, DMT. There's a guy named Strassman. He wrote a book, The Spirit Molecule, specifically in relation to DMT. That's another term. Plant allies. I don't hear that very often, but it's out there. Visionary plants. So the framing here is psychedelics as medicine. is reemerging, but also spiritual medicine, not just psychiatric. Okay, 2020s to today, we're now in our decade, mainstreaming and commercialization. So psychedelic assisted therapy is now a very popular term. It's like the term, especially in my field, in terms of my career path is towards psychedelic assisted therapy. Once I finish my undergrad next spring here at SFSU, I'm going to apply to the master's program graduate school in clinical psychology here. And my goal is to do this kind of therapy with psychedelics, and hopefully the legal frameworks, the medicalization will have gotten far enough that I actually can be a licensed psychedelic assisted therapist and do this all above ground and have both the legal protection and the community support and getting rid of the stigma so that patients, clients will be more willing to come to psychedelic assisted therapists, right? Because without it being mainstream and legitimized and legalized and medicalized, people are just too afraid to access it. Or if they do access it, they might go to somebody who's not fully trained, right? What if the drugs are tainted in some way? Unscrupulous characters, accidents. What do you do when somebody goes bonkers on too high a dose, or they weren't screened medically properly before taking these drugs? Because they are drugs. They are chemicals, but they're also plant medicines. What do you do if they go haywire and they can't integrate? But then it was done underground illegally. So then how do you get them to get help that is like above ground? You see what I'm saying? There's all these complications with the current regime around psychedelics. It is not to say that there isn't a place for the underground. Clearly, it's been existing forever. But there's pluses and minuses. In fact, some in the underground don't want to see these mainstreamed and medicalized, because we'll get into that, because that puts certain restrictions and gatekeeping on these substances, right? So I believe, as many others do, there should also be and there is a spiritual, like church context to use these things with spiritual counselors rather than a psychiatrist's office and you sit on the couch, right? But this all has to be negotiated, and it's happening now, and it's really exciting. And this is what I study, right? This is what I do, as many other people do. Okay, other terms. Enactogens. We'll define that later. I don't want to speak about what that means. Next-gen psychedelics. Later on, I'll show you. There are actually like hundreds of like psychedelic compounds. They're using AI computation to model new molecules that are similar, like one atom difference or reconfigurations of already known psychedelics, and then they're testing them in the lab, right? So there's like an almost endless number of potential psychedelics. And when you pair them with different kinds of therapies, different modalities are being developed. We'll talk about that. Psychoplastogen, plasticity, neuroplasticity focused. We'll talk about neuroplasticity. Your brain networks can be shaken up, reconfigured, especially with therapy, but also rituals and other things. Consciousness technology. Sure, why not? So the framing here, therapy, spirituality, and commerce. The importance of set and setting. This is always stressed, maybe emphasized is a better way to say it. Setting, and mindset is like the mantra, especially coming out of maybe, let's say, the 1960s. So to review, recognizing the role of the environment and mindset, psychiatrist Humphrey Osmond and author Aldous Huxley recognized that the surrounding environment and the individual's mindset and expectations profoundly shaped psychedelic experiences. The concept of set and setting. This led to the development of the influential concept, set and setting, emphasizing the crucial importance of psychological context and the physical environment in determining the nature of a psychedelic experience. Distinguishing medical and sacramental use. Osmond, Huxley, and others acknowledged that under a doctor's direction, psychedelics could be used as medicines, while with a priest or shaman, they were considered sacraments with profound spiritual and cultural significance. Thank you, computer. It's 3 o'clock. Shaping the experience. the individual's conception of the substance and its intended use, your intention going into it, into the trip, played a key role in determining the nature of the psychedelic experience rather than the chemistry alone. Even though I tell you this and you tell somebody who's new to this often gets lost in translation, in practice, which is natural, especially with people who are psychedelic naive, because you just don't know intuitively, you haven't experienced the degree to which your environment, your mindset, how much stress you're under, how much preparation you've done, the people you're with. Are you outside? Are you indoors? Are your eyes going to be closed? Do you have a face mask? What kind of music are you listening to? Or complete silence in the dark? Are you doing a candle gazing meditation, which is one of my favorite, Tritaka, fire casino meditations? Is your intention to talk to God? Are you an atheist and you don't believe in that stuff? There's so many things that go into this to be aware of. This is from the reading, okay? So when you have a chance, you'll recognize this from the reading. This is a quote by Howard Becker in the reading. Somebody's quoted. For example, the same marijuana effects that were seen as alarming and alienated to white suburban Americans were experienced as pleasurable and creative by black jazz musicians in New York. That seems pretty clear, right? If you're watching TV at home in the suburbs, it's much different than being in community with good music in New York, right? With like-minded people, rather than like doing it by yourself and like getting paranoid at home. And you've been told marijuana is like the devil's lettuce, right? And you're like, are they gonna come get me? But yeah. Okay, I am almost done with the slides. We're gonna take a break, and then I'll continue after the break. Erasure and assimilation of non-Western traditions. The extent to which Western frameworks distort or overwrite traditional uses in non-Western contexts. To what degree is this cultural appropriation, which can often be like not nice? Some people even like go as far to say it's like criminal, not in the legal sense, but like in the harm sense. But who owns these substances? Who owns these cultures? To what degree is deference owed to the cultural context and the peoples, especially indigenous cultures, of these medicines? So some example, like the Iboga tradition, which we'll talk about in this course, ayahuasca, peyote in the Native American church, and shamanic practices in Siberian cultures. I have experienced, I told you part of my heritage is Kaqchikel Mayan, and I've been in mixed culture communities, New Age communities, Mayan communities, expat communities, ex-hippies in Guatemala, on Lake Atitlan in particular. And I have struggled with seeing cultural appropriation, but also learning to like let go a bit and understand like things can be reinterpreted, right? And to whatever degree that you're honoring what came before, but then making it anew, and like providing accessibility and making it clear like what you took and what is yours, what is authentic and what is invented. But this also gets into commercialism. What are you presenting it as? And who are you as the person? Welcome. Who are you as the person presenting this? How are you doing it, right? How are you doing it? Did you inherit this tradition from an elder? Did you get trained in this tradition? Were you given permission to use this cultural context, these practices, these rituals, these sacraments, in the way that you're saying? Are you presenting yourself as some shaman because you took an online course? Or were you born in this tradition in the Amazon and this is all you know? This is you, this is your person, this is your culture, these are your people. And who polices this? Right? Like, I have been firm with people in some contexts, but I quickly learned people don't like it when you say, I don't think you're doing that right. You get ostracized, you get pushed out, you get seen as a problem. oftentimes, unfortunately, there's a lack of curiosity about the very indigenous customs they claim to be sharing and citing from. I've learned to be less like, you're not doing that right, to more, instead of tearing people down, build up what you think is the better example. This is a large reason, a big reason why I do the work I do. And in particular, my tradition is mushrooms, and I'm a cacao ceremonialist, cacao from Guatemala in particular. Okay, that's the last slide. All right, so I did promise you a break. I will finish this section and then we'll have a break. Yeah, I'm good on time. So the psychedelic renaissance is a huge term that's being used right now. And as we said, the medicalization of psychedelics, it's dominated by the medicalization of these substances, and they are primarily framed as clinical medical tools for mental health, treatment in sanitized, controlled environments. In fact, when I did IV ketamine, I did like 5 treatments of increasing doses of IV, meaning intravenous ketamine. It was near the Stanford campus in Palo Alto, and the room, it was like being in a spaceship or something, because like there were no blankets, there were no flowers, there's no incense. It was just the doc, the anesthesiologist, and the plastic tubes and the needle. No music. Count to 3, and I got to like 1.5, and I'm gone. And then I'm having this experience. I'm coming back. Fluorescent lights, like, okay. But I did say one thing to the doctor when I left after those treatments. I told him, "Thank you for being my shaman." That was my way of reframing the experience. Neuroscience reductionism. There is a strong emphasis on the neurological mechanisms of psychedelics and neurochemical, which risks reducing their effects to a purely biological perspective and overlooking the broader social, cultural, and spiritual dimensions. I think that's clear. Capitalist interests. Capitalist interests have entered into the psychedelic space, leading to concerns about the commercialization and potential, well, not just potential, the commodification of these substances, which could further constrain their use and meaning, making them like trivialized, and but also increasing their accessibility. But are they being tested in a lab? Are they safe to use? Did somebody mix in a chemical that's other than the one on the label to fool you, to evade legal restrictions? Happens all the time. All these scandals happening, unfortunately, in this manner. And the narrowing of possibilities. The dominance of these frameworks risks narrowing the possibilities of psychedelics, limiting their potential to be explored and experienced in more holistic, community-based, or ceremonial settings that honor their historical and cultural significance. So, I'm going to let you go on a break. We're due for one, I should say. But in terms of commercialism, this is a PSIL. It's an ETF, which is like a basket of multiple psychedelic stocks that are available for public purchase. And you can see, I'll go like, 10 years ago, very popular. And then there's been a crash in the price 10 years ago because there has not been the commercial development. It takes a long time to commercialize these things. So investors took a risk. If you bought it 100, let's see, a year ago it was at $7. You lost over 90% of your value if you bought it in 10 years ago. But check this out. Boing, it doubled in October of last year. And then if we go year to date almost 50%, 3 months 30%. In the last week alone has gone up almost 11%, right? And this is just the basket of goods. There's a company called Atai Life Sciences, which is, I believe, was in part founded by Peter Thiel, who backs the Trump administration, funded them a lot. I'm not going to, look at that. 262% in the last year. Cybin, they're down. Why is that? Well, regulatory frameworks, you have to do multiple trials, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, double blind, placebo, blah, 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 blah. It's expensive, and there's winners and losers. Compass Pathways is another popular one, also down. This one's interesting. MDXXF is the ticker, Pharmala Biotech. This one's in particularly interesting because I believe they focus on MDMA, specifically for research institutions and things like that. So they've been up and down, but yeah, anyway. So it is time for a break. I will explain bathrooms. I made a map. I think maps are helpful. I've gotten lost in this building several times this week, including today. So you go out this door to your right, you take another immediate right, there's a staircase on your right, you'll see another right hallway, and the men's bathroom is there, but if you continue going straight is the women's bathroom on the right. Good luck getting back. I think there's some lefts still on the way back. The water fountain, though, is to your immediate left. Okay? Let's adjourn for at least 5 minutes. I'll see if you're here or not. I'll give you extra time if you're not. Okay? All right. Would you like any cacao? It has a little coffee, like 5%. It's all Guatemalan. There's some brown sugar, honey, and a little cinnamon. You're welcome. Uh, Thanks for coming. Thank you. All right. I hope this microphone's still working. Yeah, it's working. All right. What should we talk about next? I'm going to go over my biography more. Oh, I had some videos. Yes, videos. Videos are nice. Whoa. I really want to burn this sage or Palo Santo, but I don't know how sensitive the smoke detectors are in here. That'd be exciting though, wouldn't it? If it rained. Uh, not sure where they are. Hmm. We end at 3:40, so about 20 minutes left. Okay. I think we're all back. Great. There's about 23 minutes left, so I will address two main topics. One, I'm going to go through the Canvas site, so you have an overview of that, my expectations for your participation online in that sense. And then I'll finish with more of an introduction into myself, which will particularly explain some of my core motivations behind my interest in psychedelics, let's say. I'll keep you in suspense for that part after I do the Canvas thing. All right, so I hope you've seen this flyer. I had a friend, dear friend, Mark Chavez, who's a graphic design artist, and he helped me the text. I make this over the summer. It took all summer to get it right. I made the poem. ChatGPT hallucinates in code. You can hallucinate in color. AI generates patterns. You generate possibilities. Let the robots dream in binary. You're invited to dream in full spectrum. It's a rainbow, right? Full spectrum. And he did the coloring and the psychedelic wavy background. I had the idea for the binary, right, up and down. And also to note, which I found fascinating, he picked the text font. It's called, oh shoot, Alice. Oh, darn, I'll figure it out later. But the font is from one of the first editions of Fahrenheit 451. So it's like sci-fi, computery, right? It's cool. So this is the website. Duh. Okay. I kind of Frankensteined it. Like, it's my first time actually building a Canvas site. So I imported modules of pre-made sites, and then I'm deleting stuff. This is how my Nathaniel brain works. And so there's like some stuff that should be even in the course. I have the option to publish and make it viewable or not. So I'm still like, it's a little bit Frankenstein, but it's functional. All the directions are here. I'm not going to go through it too much in depth. I have to adjust some of it because I updated it today. I'm going to re-update. The most up-to-date is the syllabus itself. The Google Doc is the most up-to-date. I have to copy-paste to Canvas just so it's visible. I'm repeating stuff. Frankenstein, the course links go to things that they don't say. But for example, announcements goes to counseling and psychological services. I am pointing this out in particular. This is all copy-pasted from the relevant links. I'm pointing this out in particular because I'm not a psychiatrist, psychologist. I'm also not your integration coach. I'm your instructor. For anyone watching this and you all, if you need help, there is help available. And as I said earlier, well, as I'll just point out now, you may have experience with psychedelics. You may be using them now. You may in the future. I'm not equipped, and it's not my role to be counseling you on use. This is all educational, right? I think that's pretty clear. That said, if you have any questions about accessing resources, I will help you. email me, come to me in person. Nobody should be without support, right? Especially in a crisis. So yeah, I think that's clear. Going, you can click on stuff. The syllabus is obviously the syllabus. Like I said, this grade stuff is outdated. I was gonna like grade on attendance, but then I realized like the asynchronous students aren't here, and if you happen to not be able to come for any week, in person, you can always watch the recordings anyway. So why would I grade you on attendance? Like, it makes sense. So instead, it's in the updated syllabus. You're being graded on something. Yes, I changed it last night. 40% weekly discussion posted engagement with readings. Completion, yes or no? It's like 250 to 300 words. I'd love it if you wrote more. I'd love it if you respond to each other. You can use AI to draft your post or not, or something in between. All acceptable. Citations, I love citations. If you throw in citations, that'd be really cool. But your opinion, your response to the readings, an additional topic not in the reading, you can do what you want with it, okay? That's 40% of your grade. 20% is the final project proposal, just like a piece of paper telling me what you're going to do. That's like midway through the course, uploaded on Canvas. And then the last 40% is the final project, a presentation, essay, creative work. I was in this course last spring, and people did poems, they did acrylic artwork, presentations, you name it. You can do it. So I think that's pretty clear. Next important thing is modules. You see what I mean by Frankenstein? All this stuff for some philosophy course, I think. Anyway, the first week is published, all the check marks. And, welcome, syllabus, my office hours to be announced next week. The textbook link. You could ask questions here if you'd like, but email, I'm more responsive. Here's the discussion. I think maybe you've all done this already before. Oh, Gina answered. Yeah. Okay, great. So what I'm asking for is just post by the end of the week, into next week, hopefully. What is your name, major, minor, interest in psychedelics, and what do you hope to learn in this course? Lastly, tell us what your spirit animal is, or your favorite book, movie, TV show, podcast, your choice. All right. So you post on there, get to know each other a bit, and the asynchronous students. And then last thing I want to point out, first week reading and podcast. Directions. Here is a structured ChatGPT summary and analysis of Mike J's epilogue from the course text. We are starting the course with this chapter because this epilogue is an intellectual sweep through the evolution of the term psychedelic, which was the basis for today's lecture, in historical, cultural, and semantic shifts, and its present and future implications. I have copied and pasted the epilogue below the summary and analysis section in the PDF that's there, in full for you to upload to ChatGPT for your own analysis. In the module section, there's a link to the AI stuff. Did you all know that you have a full subscription to ChatGPT? Yeah, it's for free. You can experiment with it, or maybe you don't like AI, so you don't want to use it. It's up to you. But here, as you can see with my pointer, if you click on this, you get this. Also a link to the textbook. If you click on this, you go to Mike J's website. He's the author of this chapter. And I think he's also one of the editors of the book. I wrote a little blurb with ChatGPT who this guy is. Here's the summary and analysis I did with ChatGPT. My prompt is give me a summary, give me the most notable points, and give me key quotes. And then here's the plain text of the actual chapter. Yeah, without citations, just for clarity, you can go to the text for the citations, which can be very interesting. And lastly, LLM, Large Language Model Podcast. I fed the PDF to this thingamabob from Google, and you can ask it questions like, how have the definitions and cultural interpretations of psychedelic evolved over time? You can interrogate it, right? You can ask it questions. That's where you upload the PDF. And then it spits out a podcast of these two AI parrots going, and they explain it. And then I uploaded my version for you. You can make your own version. This could be your final project. You could make a podcast thing. Up to you. Um, there's lots of cool stuff you can do with this. There's an interactive mode where you can actually talk to the AI parrots and like interject there's lots of stuff here. It's cool. So you can just listen to the podcast. You can read the reading, the summary, but also use the podcast to be fully briefed before class. Because as many educators believe, repetition to learn. Yeah. Your first pass is reading it, the LLM podcast, looking at the summary, anything like that, right? Then the second pass is when you do the discussion post due the Tuesday night before Wednesday, right? So I'm giving you a week with the next chapter. You have a week to do all this work. So the second pass is your discussion post that you're reviewing the material and producing something. And then the third pass is the lecture and discussion in class with the guest speakers. Yeah? That's the work of the course. I don't think it's too difficult. I think it's pretty accessible at your own pace with all these different tools. Last thing I'll note on this before I move on is that modules. If you go, as I said, to the wrong button. Textbook, is this the right button? Yes. Textbook and AI section. Oh, I ordered a softcover book of the textbook for myself just to have. It's coming today. You can get softcover. You can get a Kindle edition of the book. I already provided the PDF. It's Creative Commons license, so you can share it freely. Here's the SFSU AI policy. Here's the login details for how to get into ChatGPT. It's part of your tuition. Might as well use it or try it. Grammarly Pro. I love it. It's free. If you pay, you get more features. I don't like reading stuff with bad grammar and spelling and it doesn't make sense. It's just me. I don't know. But if you get this, it's a plugin. You can use it on your phone, on the browser, everything. Might as well. It'll improve your grade and make you more legible and clear. Third thing, there is Google Gemini free pro plan for students. Offer ends October 6th. You do have to, I think, provide a credit card, but you won't get charged for a year. I do not want to require this for students because of that reason, but I got my free subscription, and it's pretty cool to explore and have different AIs. You ask one AI one thing, and you could try the other one for another thing. One AI might say, oh, I can't do that, Dave. I can't open the bod bay doors. That's a 2001 reference by AI. It'll refuse to do something you ask it to do, but then another one will be like, sure, yeah, I'll tell you about how to use that drug. And like, okay, they're like censorship, right? Okay, whatever. So you ping pong them. They have different features, obviously. Yeah. And then my AI policies in here, and more in depth about how to cite in AI. There's a browser plugin called, well, it's somewhere in here. Anyway, you can read that. And there's a discussion of discussion posts down here. Okay, moving on in the last 8 minutes or so. Not that one. Whoops. Close that. Dude. Ta-da. This is part of my book that is under construction. Been under construction for a couple of years at least. Psychedelic mind-body therapy. This is my gato. This is my cat from Guatemala, my spirit animal. She thinks she's a jaguar, but don't tell her otherwise. Is anyone allergic to cats? I hope to bring her to class and have her wander around. Because she's at home in my apartment a lot, you know. And I'm the instructor, so like, I can bring my cat, right? This is a heating pad. I'm going to talk about chronic pain. I have fibromyalgia. I'll explain what that is. Headphones, a meditation. Not sure what this water pipe is doing there. But yeah, she's my trip sitter, like often. I often trip alone with her. What is fibromyalgia? Fibromyalgia is a common chronic pain disorder characterized by a robust clinical phenotype, meaning physical presentation, with principal features that include widespread pain and tenderness, as well as high levels of sleep disturbance, fatigue, cognitive dysfunction, and emotional distress. Sounds fun, huh? Fibromyalgia symptoms occur along a spectrum ranging from mild to severe. The impact on the patient can be very high, with significant effects on personal, recreational, and work activities, like preparing slides the day before a lecture. The pathophysiology of fibromyalgia is complex and involves abnormal processing of pain and other sensory inputs, which modulate this input, are the critical elements that initiate the sequence of events that lead to the clinical phenotype, the presentation that I experience. The functioning of the stress response through its links to pain and other sensory neural processing is a key upstream component of the fibromyalgia cascade. Furthermore, emotional distress appears as a common everyday driver of this process. The mechanisms contributing to the clinical phenotype of fibromyalgia are driven by a top-down process. And then I have citations for everything. So just real quick, life events like the child developmental abuse I suffered, considerations and appraisals. This basically means like how I think about it, how I reflect on it, how I've dealt with it, like therapy and stuff. Oh, which gets into physiological modifiers, beliefs, my personality. I used to be a lot more neurotic and shy, but now I'm more extroverted and grounded. Control of my behavior, thoughts, and affect. Affect is like how I present myself, right? How I'm able to behave. Emotional responses, anxiety, depression, distress. Yep. Activation of the stress response. And you see the feedback loops? Not only are they feeding back to the top, but they're feeding bottom down too and to each other. This is complex, yeah? And ultimately, you get biological responses. Central sensitization is a fancy term for my nervous system is inflamed all over my body. My brain, my spine, nerves, everywhere. So the fibromyalgia phenotype, pain, poor sleep, fatigue, changes to cognitive function. All right. But there's hope. Here is a diagram from a paper, chronic pain. Failed standard medical therapy. There's not a great treatments out there for fibromyalgia. Believe me, I have taken all of them, pretty much. And invented a few for myself, which is the point of this book. But check this out. Potential candidate for 5-H2A agonist. Anyone know what 5-H2A, the significance of that is? What's the significance, sir? Serotonin. Very good. It is one of the principal receptors for psychedelic action and also serotonin, in the brain. So basically, psychedelic therapy can help with chronic pain and inflammatory problems, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, erythromelalgia, genetic, I'm not sure what that is actually, neuropathic phantom limb pain, like veterans, people like that, cancer pain, nociceptive pain, and then we have fibromyalgia. TMJ is temporomandibular tension. You're so tense, yeah? I got that too occasionally. But yeah. So yeah, this piece goes into the science of how I've been treating myself and different therapies. But we'll talk about that later in the course. In my remaining time, about 6 minutes, I want to tell you a short story. Can I not zoom? There we go. Huh? Yeah, it's fighting me. I got to make it bigger to make it smaller. The plus sign is... All right. So I promise I'll get you out on time. And I'm happy to linger any questions, or I'll see you next week. You already know your assignments, yeah? I promise to post the Psychedelic chapter, parts of it, tonight, and at least by tomorrow, just like I showed you with the epilogue, yeah? So you're ready to go. You have a week to prepare, okay? And post. What is going on here? Well, I went to Brown University. It was an Ivy League college in Providence, Rhode Island, right after high school. Freshman, I went there 3 semesters. And unfortunately, I got depressed and my first semester. And they gave me Zoloft, which is a common antidepressant. And therapy for the first time. It was like, 18, 19? And okay, I seemed to be all right. Went back to Rhode Island in the middle of the winter. It's cold. It gets cold. California is nice here and sunny, and Anyway, as I said, I was very introverted. I had a lot of trouble making friends, connections. I was isolated. I got into computer gaming addiction. For 10 years, I played this computer game, a MMORPG, massively multiplayer online role-playing game called EVE Online, which is like a super nerdy spaceship simulator, combat, spreadsheet, economic, single shard, international server. It's like the best game ever. Instead of like going to class and doing my homework and making friends, I was very depressed. And so I went home before I think the end of my second semester, medical leave or something. And basically, it was not good. I then took an extended leave from Brown. I was working like retail, like Safeway deli counter, and like trying to go to community college, but I was still depressed. But eventually, I got on a different antidepressant, the venlafaxine, I believe it's pronounced, more commonly known as Effexor. It was relatively new at the time, and the first time I took it, I told the nurse who had given it to me, because I was a straight edge, like I didn't drink, I didn't do cannabis, nothing. The first time I took it, within I don't know, a few minutes, not that long, I was like, I think I'm high. I told the nurse, I'm like, I think I'm high, and she's like, eh. All right, and then but later like it subsided, and then I was not depressed. I was functional. I could study. I went to UC Berkeley Extension for a while. I lived in a frat house I wasn't a member of. I was able to like socialize more, complete some of the studies at the Extensions College. I went back to Brown, right? Unfortunately, what I didn't know and what the doctors didn't tell me was that venlafaxine Effexor can have MDMA and amphetamine-like stimulant and psychedelic effects. What? So I'm in my dorm room, and I'm getting amped up. I'm like, what's going on? I'm alone. And I start having, not just MDMA effects, I start having delusions that I'm Jesus Christ. I have a full-blown mystical experience. Psychoactive effect is putting it mildly. And I was a militant atheist, so it's very confusing. Psychoactive effects. In association with venlafaxine intake, misusers, I wasn't misusing it, I was taking as prescribed, reported here a mixture of enactogen effects, euphoric mood, and more vivid dreams. Venlafaxine was here compared with MDMA ecstasy. There's a quote here from somebody who used it. I have nicknamed it baby ecstasy for its strikingly close similarity to the MDMA experience. It mimics MDMA quite well, but you never get that feeling you get the first time you try it, and subsequent doses lose a lot of euphoric effects, okay, blah, 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 especially with days and weeks between doses, tolerance. For both its psychoactive effects and occurrence of tolerance, which is typically observed with MDMA. Other effects are stimulant properties. People use it as an performance enhancer. Other people say stimulation quality, similar to tramadol, which is an opiate, which was given to me for the first time for my fibromyalgia chronic pain 10 years ago. So some people say it's like an opiate. Some people say it's like MDMA. I say it was like an entheogenic experience, like LSD or mushrooms or... So I had no idea what was going on. I was blown completely out of the water as a psychedelic naive person. I was essentially poisoned by my own doctors. I went to my therapist at the time, and he had no clue what to do because I was like, it also made me manic. So I was talking really fast and loss of inhibition, talking to strangers. I bought a box of crayons at the drugstore, and I was going to melt them down and make a piece of art for whatever reason. I started doing coursework for classes I wasn't a part of. But then I realized after like weeks of this, oh shit, I think it's the drugs. So I stopped taking them, and then I had a massive depressive crash. I tried going to the church right across the street from my dorm room, which was Unitarian Universalist. And, but how could I talk to them about a drug-induced mystical experience that they have no context or ability to help me with? And then there's the shrink. Nothing made sense. And so I went home, and another leave, and I never went back to Brown. I've been at other institutions, including College of San Mateo, where I got my associate's degree in psychology, Notre Dame de Nemours in Belmont, where I did philosophy and religious studies. I even did a stint at UC Davis, but I started smoking way too much cannabis because my roommate was a dealer, and I had a beautiful blonde girlfriend, so I just gave up on classes entirely. And now I'm here, more or less. This is the story. And this is my institutional academic home now. And I'm very proud to be a San Francisco State student. I'm going to finish my degree here and hopefully my master's, as I said, in clinical psych. And that's me. And this is why this is really meaningful to me and why I talk about the benefits and the risks. And I hope you benefit from the education in this course and you use psychedelics wisely. And here we go. This is going to be a great course. We're still recruiting. Please tell your friends. I've invited members of the general public, and we'll be posting this on YouTube and such. And we'll have wonderful guest speakers this semester. Next week is Cyberdelics. I am looking for volunteers who want to try an Oculus 3 headset. I'll be showing what you see on the headset on the screen and other stuff, and the lecture next week. So I'll be emailing and see if you want to do that. Course has ended today. I'm 1 minute over time. Thank you so much for your attention, and hope to see you next week. That's it. Not bad. That was fun. You're very welcome, Kyle. You're very welcome.